Hello, welcome to Voting Smart. This is Barbara Connor, and we are all about informing voters. We're very pleased today to take off in a little bit different direction because it's not an immediate election issue. What this is broadening our horizons and understanding more about the area in which we live. And we're very proud that AOC Community Media reaches 5 parishes. So today we're going to talk about, in particular, Iberia Parish, but all of us can learn from this exciting urban design that they are engaged in. We've got a couple of very creative people here today. So let me introduce to you Amelia, Cronan, and Phanat, Xanamane.
Yes.
Rhymes with cinnamon. Okay, thank you. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, we're so glad you could be here. This is really a special opportunity to me because I'm not sure that many people understand what urban design is about. What are some of the possibilities with making good changes? Let's see, why don't you tell me some of the background about what you're doing and some of the issues that you're facing?
Sure. Well, I'm an urban designer, and I grew up in New Iberia. My family were first-generation Laotian immigrants that settled in that area.
Okay,
and
so that's Laos.
Laos, yes.
Laos, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh, Laos.
Yes.
Southeast Asia, just to get
Southeast
everybody.
Asia. And they came to the States in the early 80s, and I grew up, and they settled in a neighborhood called the West End of New Iberia, which is was at some point in the 60s was a thriving community, and since the 60s, and a lot of people attributed it to sort of after desegregation, that there was a steady decline over the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And but I grew up in that neighborhood in the 80s and the 90s through the 90s, and just saw all the potential that that community had, and saw that if we change things here and there and we got together and fixed a couple of things, that it can actually be a much better place, much better community. So I went to study architecture here at UL for 5 years, and then right after that I went to Columbia University to get my master's in urban design, and spent some time in New York City and in Bangkok, Thailand, just studying and experiencing great cities and great public space. And for me, my passion is urban design, and it's about looking at, it's an emerging new field, and it's a mix between architecture, landscape architecture, urban planning, social anthropology. All these things come together. So I've really have this sort of interdisciplinary, collaborative sort of background that I got while I was away in New York City, and wanted to bring that back and ground it in this context of Iberia Parish and use it in a place where it would actually make some positive difference, and that really needed it. So.
Okay, so it's not just about buildings.
Right.
It's about how the buildings relate to each other and how people relate to the buildings and the setting overall, the landscaping.
Yes, the public realm is what we usually
public
say.
realm,
Yeah, things that
okay.
fall into the public realm, which includes politics and policy and those things as well. How can we begin shaping those things through the built environment? And that's how Envision the Berry started to emerge. And then when I moved back about 1.5 years ago, my colleague Amelia Cronan here, Mimi, came back at the same time, and I told her about what I was doing, and I'll let her take it from there.
Did you say you went to high school together?
We did.
Yes.
Oh my
Niche
goodness.
class of '99. Yeah.
All right. Well, Mimi, if I may call you that.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit of your background.
Like Phanat, I grew up in New Iberia, all across the area. I wasn't located in one neighborhood. My family moved around a bit. After high school, I went to Loyola University, New Orleans, where I majored in political science and German, and I got to travel quite a bit around Europe with that background and that orientation. And some of the work that I did was in Berlin, actually in the former East. and trying to organize citizens to working with an organization that was organizing citizens to basically inside and outside government work at the same time to affect change and redevelop the East,
Right.
to turn these old abandoned factories into something that would be more viable for future, such as the technical school. So when I came back to the States, I worked in New Orleans. I fell back into a nice, comfortable life there where I could manage and learn management skills. Then Katrina hit, and I decided it was time to go to grad school. So I went to the University of Washington in Seattle, where I got my master's in political science, and I focused my research efforts on learning statistics and about urban politics.
So you're the one we should have on Voting Smart.
Most
Thank you.
definitely.
Had to know about that.
Thank you for bringing your talents to us.
It's my pleasure. I moved back here after I graduated with my master's because there really wasn't much educational, or there wasn't much weren't many job opportunities in Seattle. The economic recession hit really hard in the Northwest. So I moved back home and met up with Phanat, and we've been kind of blazing new trails since then.
All right. All right. Well, this is interesting. I like the background on this. So what's happening now?
Well, we'll start right after we moved back and we spoke with each other. I was interested in doing some work in the West End.
Yes.
And at that point in time, this was in the early fall of 2011. At that point, there had been over a number of years different agencies and institutions that had come into the West End, and we're trying to get the community together and propose a master plan, essentially. And they actually had a couple of these master plans proposed. And while I was in New York, I was sort of following this through the internet and sort of like, oh, I wish I was there to be involved in this, but I was getting my experience and needed to be there. But when I came back, I was expecting, okay, the master plan has been out for a couple of years now and people have been talking about all this revitalization, but when I came back, I didn't really see as much as there should have been. Things move rather slowly, I think, in New Iberia, and I wanted to add some momentum to that and get people really engaged with it. And I had my experience in working with a public artist, Mary Miss, in New York City, was one of the things we developed is how to use public art in a way to motivate people and inspire people to begin changing their communities for the better. And so this is why we came up with this organization, Envision the Berry.
Okay.
And what Envision the Berry does is, if we just bring up some of the JPEGs, we're an organization that uses art and technology to build sustainable communities or provide a more sustainable vision for Iberia Parish as a whole.
Right.
And
DeBerry, I think, means...
Is a nickname for New Iberia, yeah.
Okay,
So I forget to mention that sometimes. So to our audiences who are not familiar with the term DeBerry, it is a nickname for New Iberia.
Okay.
And if we go back to the second slide, you'll see that what I was talking about, some of the master plans. I think this one was developed by Southern Mutual Help Association and a local architect, Steve Oob, here in Lafayette. And the next slide shows a master plan that was developed by the Community Design Workshop at UL. And so these things were sort of put out there in the community, and they got people engaged to sort of participate in the design of these things. But there seemed to be a lack of know-how, I guess, to really implement. Like, okay, we have these master plans now, what do we do with them? How do the citizens, the regular folks that are in this neighborhood, and this is a really underserved community where there's high illiteracy rates, very low high school graduation rates, and high crime, high poverty. So, they have these master plans which were really wonderful given to them, but they just sit on the shelf somewhere because how do you get the citizens to really begin implementing these things? So we stepped in. We thought it would be appropriate to step in using art and community engagement to really get people to understand what was happening with the master plan and how do you get it rolling on a grassroots level.
Right.
Very grassroots.
Well, it's so much, I think for most people, it's easier to engage with and feel an emotion about art than it is about looking at a map. And I think that's what you've been doing, is energizing people.
It definitely makes those things that are in that master plan. A lot of people are not architects, they're not designers, they don't necessarily know how to read plans and sections and architectural drawings. So when you when you use art and you put it out there in a visual, tangible way, it just connects with people. And that's one of our strategies as we engage with the West End community and with Iberia Parish. One of the slides that you see, if you go after those master plans, this is sort of the idea. At the bottom of the screen there's an empty schoolyard lot, which goes underutilized for most of the school year. But what if that lot was actually reappropriated for a community garden, for instance? So the installation, that was the concept behind the installation. It went into these spaces down Hopkins Street, which was the major sort of thoroughfare down in the West End neighborhood, and it got them to instead of seeing an empty parking lot or vacant lot, we put an installation in there. It was a temporary 5-week installation that just showed them the possibilities of what can be there besides an empty lot. So we had 5 themes that we were working with. We were working with public health the first week, and for that week we had a community garden. The second week, which is on screen right now, is a local marketplace that showed that that students from LSU actually helped to do. This was part of a service learning course that they were doing and I was teaching. And this is an art gallery the third week and a performance space. And it wasn't just making the spaces, the public space, but it was also about programming them as well, getting the community involved in putting the programs in, putting a fashion show, getting vendors, putting marketplace in there, getting artists to inhabit that space. So it was just really engaging, and I think it was so, we got so much positive feedback from the community, and it was a great way for us to introduce ourselves to the community as well.
Yes.
And and we got a lot of different other organizations involved, and we just found that it was a great way to connect different people in the community, like public, private, in the government, all coming together into a public space and talking about the potential of what can happen there and seeing it as well.
And yes, being able to walk through it, that's fascinating. So you have these signs around that help the imagination, and then the participation and actually making the new space and walking through it. I think that's very interesting. And then the dynamic of the young people from, is that you?
That's an image of us. We were trying to be as sustainable as possible. All the materials that were used, the two basic materials were white plastic woven fabric and PVC pipes, and those were recycled into these bike racks at the end of the installation and donated to the parks of the city. And the canvas materials were made into recycled bags that we gave out to the community. And the picture of us standing on the solar trailer was a donated gift from Gulf South Solar in Baton Rouge, and the whole installation was powered through solar energy. So we were just trying to raise all these different, hit all these different points.
Gulf what in Baton Rouge?
Gulf South Solar, and I believe Jeff Shaw heads up that company and is based in Baton Rouge.
And so they provided the
solar
electricity.
trailer. Yes.
How interesting.
So that ran the audio, the speakers for the fashion show, and we had a movie night, and that ran the projector for the movie night, and it was really a great installation.
Wow.
Got a lot of people excited.
Yes, so it really addresses many different areas of community life.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and it's all about was trying to really have the holistic approach, I think, to community. Like, we're not just focusing on the economic or the business aspect or just the public health aspect, but these things can be interrelated and intertwined, and that you can bring these things together.
Right.
So after the installation, I'll let Mimi go talk a little bit about what happened after the installation.
Sure.
Well, yeah, what my role, one of my roles was to evaluate the data and to process what it was that we were learning from the community, interpret the feedback and see, okay, where are we and where do we go from here? And what the synthesis is that we learned that the community really wants to connect, but they don't really have, the public spaces, or in this case, what we kind of went outside the box in our next step and decided to create virtual spaces and use a civic interaction model based on bridging the digital divide as a way to bring people together through art, right? Because the thing about a place like New Iberia is it's a small town, and there's a lot of myths that surround small towns. There's not a whole lot of truth. When I first got to New Iberia, I was like looking for data. I wanted to see what the community actually looked like, not what the rumors about the West End were. I wanted to know the income distribution. I wanted to know the graduation rates. I wanted to know the crime rate. And this information really wasn't readily available. So my quest in this journey has been to really start making this information available, because without this information, people really don't have an accurate reflection of who they are, either as individuals or as a community. And without really knowing who you are, you really can't make that step to change. So there's a step of empowerment of the idea that with data and with technology and with information will come the sense of empowerment. And the whole way that Phanat and I have sort of integrated this is that art can open people's minds. And then once the mind is open, then you can flood them with the truth.
Wonderful.
And so we've decided that the next step would be to provide a digital, if we can't, have a physical space where people can be in public and organize, then we can create one virtually. And so we got a grant from the Foundation for Louisiana. And we hired a local web designer named Kristen Shackleton from Spring Scripts. And he designed an app for us and integrated a new website that would allow the public to interface in a way that they haven't before. It's basically, if you can bring up the slide.
The slide of the website?
Yeah, the website slide. We've got...
it's towards the end. It's actually the last two slides.
Yes, this is the website that Christian designed. And it's essentially, the way it works is that we've got a map and a timeline, a scrolling timeline, and a series of categories in the color-coded column. And it allows people, anybody in the community, to post an event. You can log in through your social media, Facebook, or you can create your own identity. And then you can choose from one of the categories that we have listed, whether it's public health and wellness, local commerce, art and entertainment, culture, transportation, education, or housing. And it fits into one of those categories, and then you can locate it on the map. You can locate it in space and time where events are going to happen. Now, this can go, when we get to a point where we have a large enough server, ideally, we can start to connect some of the missing pieces of the historical narrative. Because as Phanat mentioned earlier, the story about why the West End became so, the story of the decline.
The economic decline.
Correct. Being the result of desegregation, to me as a social scientist, that seems kind of counterintuitive, that desegregating would lead to less economic empowerment. That's the opposite of what tends to happen. So at least we can maybe start getting an idea of how to fill in those blanks, because the history really hasn't been captured in any medium that we have accessible. So that's kind of what the vision is at this point. And we're in the process of fundraising so that we can get our own 501c3 application, so become a legit nonprofit organization.
So you're a volunteer group.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
all the work has been volunteer so far,
Wow.
actually. And the funding that we've received so far, we've had fiscal sponsors. For our first project, for instance, we received a grant from the Louisiana Division of the Arts, the Decentralized Arts Funding Program. and our fiscal agent for that was the Hopkins Street Revitalization Association, and Mr. Joseph Lockwood heads up, is the president of that organization, and through the Foundation for Louisiana, we got another community grant, and the foundation actually were the fiscal agents for us there. And now we're just realizing that we have our own mission, and we do things our own way, so we need to get our own non-official nonprofit going.
Well, it sounds like there are some very official groups who have trusted you all a lot with
Yes.
taking on this scope and this vision, and bringing some new dynamic, new energy to a place that is maybe, I don't know, there's so many areas where people get caught up in hopelessness. And I know many people of whatever economic level get into hopelessness about politics or economy, and certainly in an area where the historical shift has been, unfortunately, going in an unhappy direction, that people do get stuck in an inertia, feeling stuck and hopeless. And so the color, the action, the interaction, and then of course the dialogue through the web, and then dialogue in person, because you have people close enough together that they can, person to person, talk about their ideas, and get some people out energized and looking beyond the problems and looking at some possibilities. I think that's really exciting. And I notice you use bright color and...
We do.
It matches our sparkling personalities.
I think so, yes.
Well, where do you think you're going to be, say, a year from now? How do you feel about that?
Well, we definitely feel that, I feel that we'll have our 501c3 status, and right now we're with the website active, and we just released it last month, so it hasn't had a chance to gain any real momentum yet, but we're organizing a series of workshops in New Iberia for the West End community, and they're specifically targeted to get people, key players in the West End and any interested community members to come and learn about the website, and also use it as a community organizing tool.
Right.
So that if you're interested in public health, or you're interested in green transportation or culture, that you can see the other people in the community that are interested in those same topics, and you can connect with potential resources, right, and partner up in your efforts to revitalize the community. And that's what we're really aiming for the app to be, and for the website to be, for the community, something that's going to be a real effective tool in getting us, in showing us what resources are out there and what our neighbors are doing, but also inspire us as well in the path, in a very sleek and nice way. I like to do things in a very cool, designed way.
So this is something more than just Main Street revitalization, which was more architectural. And this is, well, there was some public space in New Iberia that was incorporated, but this is a broader scope. This is almost a sociological, cultural dynamic.
I would even go so far as to say slightly spiritual. In terms of lifting up the consciousness, really, is what we're talking about at some levels.
We're really not only targeting the West End, but it's a tool for the entire parish.
Yes.
And Iberia Parish, it's an interesting place. There's these sort of disparate, authentic rural communities that are dispersed throughout the parish amongst all the coastal landscape and agricultural landscape of Iberia Parish. But places like Laurelville and Delcombe and Lydia and Koto and Laotian Village in Koto, they remain sort of their separate islands. But the idea is, like, how do we connect these guys together so that we have a unified vision, a comprehensive vision for where we want the parish to go. Right. So in a year, I think hopefully people, all these different pockets of culture and life actually start to connect with one
Right.
another, and that we become more unified in our goals.
Oh, this is exciting. I think you're building a model or a seed that could be used in Abbeville, Vermilion Parish, Crowley, Acadia Parish, Karen Crow, a lot of our neighboring areas, I think could, just even the website, this is an exciting way to relate. But I think that these installations that you've developed and used in a very colorful and active way, I think that's an interesting model and design and energizing way to present some possibilities to the future. So I want to thank all of you for watching Voting Smart. This is Barbara Connor with my two guests from DeBerry.